Oh dear.
Welcome.
Thanks.
I was just sharing things in all the places and also talking a little bit about how decision making was a major theme at the 90-day year. So I'm really excited for that to be our topic this week.
Excellent. Yes, I like the
Yes, I
new
like
picture
this.
format as well. So this is
Except you
good.
have comments on your face, but I think that's okay. Yeah, just go like that the whole time.
Not awkward. All right. So yeah, what are we talking about today? What are we talking
Decision
about?
making.
Decision making. So yeah, let's dig into it.
All right. So I think what might be a fun way to start is to talk about big decisions we've both made recently, either
Yes.
professionally or personally. So,
Sounds good. And before we do, just
yes.
tiny piece of housekeeping, just so you don't have to watch the end to get this. But come join us Friday, 2 days from now, here in the group. I'm awkwardly looking around my phone at the at my calendar. So please come at 1 Eastern / 10 Pacific. We're going to be having here in the group one of our thought leader implementation program clients, who's also a dear friend and just amazing, wonderful human being, Tanya Gerard. She's a congruency coach, and central to her teaching and her coaching is decision making. And so who better to complement today's and this week's topic than Tanya. So we're excited to have her in here to be chatting with you guys, to be sharing some of her wisdom. So if you have questions or if you have big decisions that are weighing on you, come with those in mind. And I think you'll get a lot of clarity from that call.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll make an event and invite you guys to the event too, so that you don't have to remember the words that we just said. Remembering is hard sometimes.
Remembering is hard.
So let's dive in. Marie, what is a decision that you made recently, either in the business or elsewhere?
A big decision or just a decision?
I don't think it has to be a big decision. Oh, no, Rochelle, it's going to be live in the group, just like this.
But you'll be able to comment and ask questions.
Yes, because I think that's a piece of it, right? Decision making is, it's not always the big decisions that move us forward. Sometimes it's the little micro decisions that actually end up resulting in the biggest amount of progress, right?
Yeah, that's true. And I think that's part of that whole trusting the journey thing. And I really like that quote that you had about how there aren't problems, there are just decisions to be made. Yeah, and Lindsay, you're right. We have to make decisions. We cannot move forward if we don't. Yay, I'm glad you made a micro decision to join us today. So let's see. What is a decision that I've made recently?
I just threw you out.
No, it's
threw
okay.
you under the bus there.
It's fine. I've made a lot of decisions. I just have to pick one of them. So one of my recent decisions was actually finally getting off my butt and joining a gym. I've been talking about doing it forever. My excuse for a very long time was, hey, I'm in an RV. I don't live somewhere where I could have a gym membership, although that's a little bit of BS just because there are some national chains that I could have joined and been able to go to different locations. But I've lived here since June now. Well, I've lived in this house since June. I've lived in this area since March, so a year, and it took me this long. So, but I finally did it, and I'm feeling really good about it. I have been putting poor Jesse's like seeing all my little gym classes on the calendar. They're clogging up everything, but I've sort of gone in feet first, and it's been hard because I'm super, super duper out of shape at this point. But going back and continuing to go, even though I'm sore and in pain and grumpy about it, and actually kind of loving it, I think has been continuing those micro decisions for my own health and self-care. And I think ultimately the health of the business, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Lisa Carpenter was doing a live stream earlier today about that topic exactly, and this idea that you can't really expect yourself to be a high-performing top-level fill in the blank with what you do if you're not taking care of the vessel in which you're doing the things.
Yeah,
and
I haven't been.
The two go hand in hand.
Totally. So I think just making a decision to say, like, I'm not going to be judging myself around this. Like, this is just reality right now. This is where I am. Doesn't mean anything about me as a human being. Doesn't make me a bad person that I haven't been going to the gym. But I've now decided like this is a priority, and then continuing to make that decision going forward has been big.
Yes.
High
Yes,
maintenance
for sure.
vessel, yes.
And
Yes.
Lindsay also said, I'm making the decision to actually take control of my calendar. That's huge. That's a huge decision because our calendars can get so out of control so quickly that making that decision to just start reining it in and putting the boundaries and the parameters and stuff may not seem like a lot at first, but once it's all like the dust settles, it can make a huge difference in your life.
Totally.
Um,
So stickers on, oh my gosh, guys, I love stickers. So I was taught that, well, I was probably taught that by a kindergarten teacher at some point, but it was reinforced for me by Jess Rodriguez, who does gold stars. She literally does stars on her calendar and on her to-do list, and it's her way of building habits, healthy habits. And so, yes, I don't actually have stickers, but I definitely draw little stars and smiley faces for myself. Yes, I do. Okay, how about you,
Love it.
Jesse? What's the decision you've made recently?
Yeah, so one of the decisions I've made recently is to take some quiet time to meditate every day, which is which has in the past been difficult for me because I don't sit still very well. And I've always been one of those people who wrote that story for myself where I'm bad at meditation.
Mm.
So I've been making micro decisions around it, right? So one of the things I've started asking myself every day is, what can I do today to support my mind, and what can I do today to support my body? And sometimes that's a 1 minute meditation. Sometimes if I'm feeling into it, it's like a 10-minute meditation. Sometimes if I'm thinking about my body, I'll do one push-up and call it a day. Sometimes I'll go to the gym for an hour. It's allowing myself that flexibility, but still making the decision to do something that allows me to move forward and know that I'm making some sort of progress every day.
Totally. Yeah, that's so powerful too. And I love those questions that you ask yourself and then you're able to actually answer them. Hey, Linda, glad you're
Yeah.
here.
And sometimes it's nothing, right? Like sometimes maybe I pushed myself really hard yesterday, scaling a mountain or going snowboarding for the first time in your case. And
That
the best
happened.
thing I could do and the best thing I can do for myself in that day is nothing, is just
Yeah.
relaxing and letting myself recover.
Right. It's true. I mean, I think we do actually, I mean, physically, we can gain strength on those rest days because we're allowing our body to knit back
Mhm.
together. But I think that happens in our business too, right? So post 90-day year, it was really important that you gave yourself a few days to like ease back into things and not have thousands of meetings on the calendar because you'd been extroverting a lot. And I think even if you were self-identifying as an extrovert, you probably still would have needed that time. Or even for me, for instance, it didn't feel actually very heavy at all to be just sort of the point person on things while you were gone. But I found myself on Thursday when you got back feeling kind of tired. So like I allowed that to be a thing, but I just allowed some rest for myself as well. So we both kind of took a step back the last 2 days of last week. And I think that was a really wise decision. And
Yeah.
of course I had to do that physically after snowboarding, guys. That was comical.
I'm just proud of you for trying.
Exactly. Yeah. It was fun. I never thought I could do it.
So I want to talk kind of maybe quickly through, or we could kind of dive into each point, but around some of the takeaways from 90-day year that were specific to decision making, because I think a lot of them really, like I already knew them, but it put words to what I sort of already knew and didn't have words or phrases around. And that kind of gave me the clarity to now that I've rested and stopped extroverting, to now figure out how do I apply this into my life and into my business in a way that allows me to be a better leader for those people that I'm around. So Maria already mentioned one of them, which is that there is no such thing as a problem in most situations. It's not a problem, it's a decision that needs to be made. And that's just a quick reframe that you can do when you feel stuck in something, is to ask yourself, what is the decision that needs to be made here?
I really like that a lot. And I think it makes it a little less scary, and it takes out the judgment, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
problem is sitting in a well of judgment. A
Yeah.
problem is something that has to be fixed, but a decision
It
is just
implies something is
something,
wrong.
right? Exactly. A decision needing to be made is a whole realm of possibility, right? And there's not necessarily a judgment attached to that. And this is actually a point too that Tanya brought up in response and a comment in response to one of the posts that I posted here in the group. I think it was yesterday. She was saying, there's also a question, you can make a decision about whether you actually need to make the decision right now. So for instance, we've been looking at that. So just FYI, you're probably going to be seeing some stuff from Jesse and me soon about another challenge. It's been forever since we've done one. But we're actually holding off. Initially, our calendar had us saying, all right, we're going to be promoting that pretty soon. But we're holding off on the decision because we're observing right now and we're collecting information, we're doing research. And those are the important steps we need to take right now before we can actually make an informed decision. So that's, I think, a great example of what Tanya was talking about there. Like, you don't actually have to make a decision every time you think you do. And being able to discern
We're
that is
pretty
huge.
excited, Lindsay.
There's a lot of exclamation points. Awesome.
Yeah. And I think the second thing that kind of ties into that, though, is that just because you're reframing it around the idea of it's a decision and not a problem, okay, that's great. That gets you out of the negativity around it's a problem, there's something wrong with it. But that doesn't mean, and this is a second piece that I got from the conference, that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. So a lot of times the path forward is simple. The decision you need to make is simple, but it's not easy. So a very quick example of that would be if you are new to your business and you are still getting off the ground, the thing that you need most is cash flow and clients so that you can get testimonials, so that you can scale, so you can do the thing. But a lot of times, new business owners balk at the idea of selling themselves and instead get stuck in content creation land and spend all of their time and energy churning out blog posts instead of actually getting clients in the door. The simple thing that they need is to get clients. But that's not the easy thing because it means putting yourself out there in a way that might be uncomfortable. And that happens to us a lot at all phases of business and life, I think. I could easily relate this to about 1 billion life decisions I've made. It's often a very simple answer, and it's fucking hard. Like, actually walking the path is still hard.
Well, I was hearing something. What was this? For some reason, I'm feeling like it was something on Netflix, but it may have been something one of you guys said. I don't even know. But there was this question of like, okay, I have all these possible paths I could take. Which one should I take? And so the advice was write down everything that you could do and then pick the one, or like look at the one that you least want to do. Chances are there's probably something in there that is exactly what you need to do. It's the simple solution that you're a little scared of, right? That is feeling a little difficult. Now, I don't think this is always true. I think sometimes something you don't want to do, it's because it's out of alignment or it's not within your values or whatever. So I think it's up to you to kind of be able to discern that. But if it's something that is within alignment, would help you stand within your boundaries, does get you closer to your vision, but you're resisting it because it feels hard, there's something interesting there to kind of just look at.
Yeah, I think anytime we feel resistance to something, it's worth a deeper look because usually resistance comes around decisions. Like that's when resistance pops up is when there is a decision that needs to be made. You aren't just like sitting at the spa doing nothing, enjoying the day, and all of a sudden resistance pops up. It's almost always around some sort of decision or maybe a reflection on a decision that has been made where we feel this resistance. And so I think anytime we feel it, we need to investigate where it's coming from and why. And sometimes, it might be it's out of alignment. It's not right. And we've had that situation before. You know, in the past, we've made decisions for the business specifically because things felt out of alignment. And we've also made decisions to do things that we didn't really want to do on the surface because it felt hard. But at the end of the day, it moved our business forward so much further. And it was just hard because it was unfamiliar and because we weren't used to it yet. I remember like 2 years ago or so, Marie, you were super resistant to even showing up at all in Facebook groups, even our own group.
Yeah.
But that's changed over time because the perception has changed.
Yeah.
And the experience has changed.
I think that's true. And I think some of the things that helped me through that, baby steps. So it's those micro decisions, right? So Lindsay, maybe there's a micro decision you could make towards time for yourself and self-care that isn't necessarily spending a whole day getting a massage or sitting in a hot spring or whatever, but it could just be a small thing. And I know that you do invest time into self-care every now and then. So continuing to do that, those are positive decisions that, whoa, I just fell back in my chair. You know, that's kind of what helped me. It kind of desensitized me to the fear. And I think the other piece that helped me was seeing that what's the worst that can happen, right? On those times when I did put myself out there, yes, I definitely got positive feedback, and I'm a words of affirmation kind of girl. So that was valuable for me. But I think beyond that, like, I recognized that I didn't fall apart and that I still had my identity intact, and like, it was okay. You know, it's not just about external feedback. It's about what's happening inside of me as well. Yeah, I did get a round of introductions. That's true.
Like, by the way, this business has 2 people in it.
Yeah, that's people.
That was fun. Yeah, no, I definitely think that it's a process that we go through and continue going through. It's never over. It's never done because there's always something new that pops up. There's always another decision to be made. Jennifer says, everything is hard until we try and learn from it after that first time. Exactly. Yeah. I was super resistant to being on live stream for a while. It made me uncomfortable. And I would go on for like maybe a week, and then I'd be like, okay, I did it. I'm done. And then I'd stop doing it for like 3 months, and then it got hard again. So I think it's also the repetition of making these certain decisions, because once you back off from them, they start becoming difficult again sometimes.
Well, that's like the gym thing, right? Like, I was going to the gym consistently 3-4 years ago, but it was so hard to go back this time. So, it is. It's that resistance over time. So the more that we just sort of like keep ourselves desensitized to the thing that isn't actually going to hurt us at all, that's good.
Yes. So, one of the questions that was posted from one of our posts earlier this week was this idea of making decisions as the sort of thing that you get a lot of data from and then decide, sort of like you were talking about with our upcoming challenge. We're sitting back and collecting data. And then also some people kind of go the other extreme and all of their decisions are intuition based. So I'd love to kind of dive into that a little bit and talk about how to find and I don't have an answer, but how to find the balance between the data and the intuition so that you're making the best decisions to move forward. Because we're talking about leadership here, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not making some sort of decision at some point, you're not stepping up as a leader, you're stagnating. Yeah. So how do you figure that out?
So I was thinking about this morning, actually. So in my mind, it was really relating really strongly to, there's a common idea in creative writing circles, but I think Brandon Sanderson does a really good job of describing this in his creative writing for fantasy and science fiction course that he teaches at BYU. It also happens to be on YouTube. And he talks about the difference between these sort of creative pantsers writers, right, who like write from the seat of their pants, and what's happening in these situations is they are doing a really nice job of developing characters, but the story is a little fuzzy, right? And then you have these other people who are like structured writers, and they have an outline and they know exactly when everything needs to happen. And as a result, the plot is great, the pacing is great, but their characters can feel a little flat. And so what he's talking about is like, figure out what sort of part of the spectrum you're on naturally. And then B, see if you can move yourself a little bit more towards the middle, because there's strengths of both. And if you can take in both, then you're going to be maximizing everything. You'll be writing the best story you can. So I think this happens in business too, right? So when you have the pantsers, or the people who are sort of fully intuitively guided or whatever, where everything is sort of like based on how it feels, or making a decision in the moment that's sort of gut based. What's happening there is you're doing something that's super in alignment with yourself. Chances are it probably also really speaks to at least pieces of your audience, because you've been talking with them and it feels very heartfelt. But sometimes the structure isn't there behind it, right? So the funnel itself may be a little ineffective, or the follow through may be ineffective, or it isn't something that could be replicated. And then on the other side of things, you have these really beautifully structured funnels or launches or programs that like are just very immaculately created so that it totally makes sense. There's a logic behind it, but sometimes it lacks a little bit of the heart, the soul, and the listening to yourself and to others. So I don't know that I have an answer here exactly about how to marry them, but I think it's a great parallel. Yeah.
Well, I think it's about taking some sort of action, and that's sort of the, okay, we have the data, we're going to take some sort of action, but there's also the intuitive piece of trusting that it's the right action to take, trusting that it's going to pan out in a way that will benefit you. And it may not be the exact way that you planned either, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we made our plan and then things took a hard right that we did not plan on, and all of a sudden we're like, well, shit.
Yeah.
But we still learn something from it, and we still grow from it.
So I think, I mean, for us, I feel like what's been working well for us is actually really similar to what happens to us in fiction writing. So if those of you who don't know this, Jesse and I also write fiction on the side, because we just don't spend enough time together writing. But what we've discovered is that we are the pantser writers. That's like our instinct. And then once we've written way too much, we stop and we're like, okay, now we have great characters. Now let's put them in an actual structured story.
Let's work on having a plot.
Right. And so it can be the same with business, right? And so we come up with this idea that feels very like in alignment for us and in alignment for our audience. But we don't necessarily have the structure, but then that's okay, because we make the decision to go ahead with it, and then we learn and we refine over time. So that's why you'll see us offering similar programs again, and they're a little different this time. You know, the program, if you look at the features and you put them side by side, they're not exactly the same, because we've discovered what works, what doesn't. The messaging around it might be a little different, whatever it is. So that's sort of how we've been shifting that direction. I think it's also possible to start with the soulless funnel. I'm not saying your funnel's soulless, anybody, but if it feels like everything's very tactical, then it's totally possible to add in the feels and the connection just by listening and like pulling in that language that you're hearing from your audience, the things that resonate for you, that like would have resonated for you if you were where they are. Those pieces, it's possible to temper it either direction.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Linda says, how do you each feel about making a decision without knowing the how? And I love this question, because I think that's where people get paralyzed a lot, is figuring out the how and then trying to get it down to the tiniest details of the how. I think a lot of it depends on your risk tolerance.
Yeah.
So some people, they don't need to know any of the how. They're just diving in. Other people need to have at least a framework. I think we should always be testing that risk tolerance and seeing how we can grow and maybe move forward a little bit more. But yeah, Jennifer, you figure out the how as you go. I have two examples that come to mind. The first is going full-time in this business for me. It was sort of thrust upon me in that I was in a situation where I was going to be moving from Texas to California. And I had a choice to look for jobs in California or to just take this as a sign that it was time for me to let my full-time job go, my 9 to 5, and focus on the business full-time. I didn't know how I was going to make that work. I had no clue. But I knew that it was an opportunity that if it hadn't been presented to me in that particular way, I might have never made the leap. So I figured out the how as I went, and it worked out, but it only worked out because I made the decision to figure out the how as I went and really do so in an intentional way.
Yeah. And
And
then
then
you
the
stuck
other
with it.
example, yes, and then there was persistence as well, and flexibility, because when things didn't work out the way I thought they would at first, I was like, okay, let's try something different. Plus, I had you around, so that helped. And then the second example that I thought of was, which you can maybe talk about a little bit more, Marie, is our very first course, our Master Your Messaging course. When we created it, we didn't have the course when we sold it.
So FYI, those of you guys who were in the very first group, I think you knew this, but if not, there you go. Yeah, we decided that we had something that we could offer. We figured out the main takeaways and the main structure. And what would happen is the week before a module was released, we would create it. And that way, we were able to respond to things. We actually ended up adding in a module because of that, because there was a common question and need. Yes, they were wonderful, wonderful, gracious guinea pigs for us. But it also enabled us to create a more robust offering that I don't think we even would have created on our own. So I think this is that perfect example of the mix of pantsing and strategizing and putting them together, because we had the structure for the course and then we kind of pantsed it as we did it. That's not a real North Carolina. Did it. That's me. I'm from North Carolina, guys. Okay. But I remember too, like how much more, like I was surprised at how much more ended up in there and how much more robust it ended up than we would have made it without that feedback. So, but I will say the decision to do that was very scary, and I'm pretty sure we would not have done it except that I think it was Lacey Sites was like, you can do that. Like that's allowed.
Yeah.
And it's okay because you still know your stuff. You're still in integrity. Yay! There's a lot of North Carolinians on this chat. Makes me happy. Yeah, and so that, but like we still had to make the decision. I mean, we could get permission and case studies and affirmation all day long that this is a thing that people do, like you were saying, Rochelle. But we still had to make the decision to do it, and it felt very, very scary to us at the time.
Yeah, and I think part of that is, I think it's twofold. One, it was the first course we were creating, so we didn't have a really large amount of data around how other people had done it.
Yeah.
We hadn't participated in a ton of courses. Up until that point, most of our work had been just straight up client one-to-one delivery. So this was our first time treading into new territory. And we're both type A perfectionists. So we want everything to be perfect and finished and ready before it gets shipped. But, and I should have known this, like I shouldn't have needed Lacey to tell it to me because I was a high school teacher, and if there's anything that is pantsing, it's teaching high school. But I hadn't merged the two in my head, even though the course was essentially teaching. And the best way to teach is to be able to be flexible within that. So I think Jennifer, you said it a little bit down in the comments that like you can never really truly know the how. And I think that's true to an extent. You can know pieces of the how, but you can't know every single detail of it. And that's when people like me who want to know everything need to tell our brains to take a back seat and just trust that we will figure it out as we walk the path.
Yeah, we're going to keep making informed decisions. We're going to do the best we can. So glad you're here, Angelica. And I think this is too something that you'll hear from Tanya if you guys are able to make it on Friday to her talk. But I've heard her say this before, which is like, what we can do is make the best decision we can right now with the information that we have right now. And so that allows us not to second guess ourselves. It allows us to take out that judgment piece. And it allows us just to move forward saying like, okay, I know these 3 things. There's probably 18 more things I don't know, but like, this is what I can do. This is how I can make a decision at this point. I really like that. That's sort of the freedom that gives me.
Yeah. It's that whole idea of imperfect action, right? We
Yeah.
can do something which moves us forward, and then we can always circle around and refine and, perfect, which I don't think is really a thing, it later.
Tweak. Oh my gosh, I've been quoted.
Yes.
Feels very fancy.
That's how you know you've made it, when you get quoted.
Hey, thanks, Linda.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think you're so right. I just saw Angelica's comment there about like people getting stuck waiting for perfection, which doesn't exist. So true.
Right.
So true.
Perfect time, the perfect situation, the perfect course, the perfect material. Like, guys, if you're waiting for perfect, it ain't gonna come.
We're human, right? I actually once had a pastor tell me that if he could envision a perfect church and he could just like, create it in his mind, it's just going to be perfect without blame. And then literally the second he joins it as the first member, it's going to be imperfect. This is just our nature, right? Like we're imperfect beings. The things that we create aren't perfect, but this is cool because it's an expression of our creativity. And it's an expression of us being able to learn and grow and shift. And something that's perfect right now for your audience, like a perfect course, is not going to be perfect a year or two from now because your audience is going to shift. Your message is going to shift. Things are going to change. So it's okay. Like it's actually better to just sort of go with that kind of flow. Not even if you're a type A person, like we kind of are, like just knowing that like all I'm going to do right now is the best I can do right now with what I have, the decisions I can make, the information I have, the amount of energy I have, whatever.
Yep, totally. And Rochelle says, I think we need some form of personal urgency or passion to drive that act of deciding. I love that. So yeah, let's talk about that. How do you, if your goal is to take imperfect action, how do you create the urgency for yourself so that you don't get stuck in the perfection, so that you do take the imperfect action?
Yeah. Well, I think that when we're creating something, it's part of it is based around that research or the conversations you've had with your audience, but trusting that like, even though it is imperfect and you probably will continue to tweak and change it, they need what you have right now and what you're capable of creating right now. Your audience needs you, your platform, your thought leadership platform or your course or whatever it is that you're building upon, that is going to be helpful to people right now as it is imperfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, everyone's kind of motivated by different things. Some people, and I think there needs to be a combination of sort of intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. So an extrinsic motivator might be, I need money in the bank, or I really want to get new copy for my website, so that means that I need to have these pieces in place. So that's my external motivator. And your internal motivator could be something like, I want to reach X number of people with my message because it's really important to me. And if I don't make these decisions, I'm not going to reach those people.
Yeah.
So I think it's about finding the motivators that work for you.
Yeah, totally. So Rochelle's talking to you about like, a lot of it can have to do with facing the consequences if you don't decide and take action, right? So looking at the status quo, where does the status quo leave us? Well, we know actually, right? Because that's what we are in right now. So we're able to sort of follow that to its logical conclusion or a logical conclusion. And then I think too, I love the 4 questions that Adrienne Dorison asks around like, what's the best that could happen? What's the worst that could happen? What are the other 2?
Will I die?
Will I die? And does this move me closer to my goals? Right. These are her 4 questions that could walk you through any decision or help you get closer. But I think the purpose of the will I die is to put it into perspective. Chances are it's probably going to be no, unless you're snowboarding for the first time. I know, I was fine. I was not moving very fast on that bunny slope. But I think the one about what's the worst that could happen and following that to the logical conclusion, part of it is meant to, again, put it into perspective, but B, it's also meant to be a motivator, right? To say like, the worst that could happen is whatever, people unsubscribe from my list, which does mean that I now have a smaller list. Okay, so what does that actually mean? Well, it probably also means that the people who remain on it are higher quality fit for me. That there's sort of the flip side of it, and we're able to think through what that worst that could happen actually looks like.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I had this experience recently, actually. So one of the things that we've been doing in this group since the changes is having monthly roundtables. We had one in February, we had one in March, we'll have another one towards the end of April, where instead of being here, we'll be in a Zoom room and chat about different leadership topics. The first time we did it, we did a lot of promotion around it. We sent a couple of emails to our list, we talked about it in the Facebook group a lot. We were really, really kind of pounding it hard because it was the first time and people were not in the habit of seeing it yet. And we had, I think, 4 people show up, 4 people?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 4 people show up, and it was great. It was an amazing conversation, which really energized us towards keeping it moving forward. Flash forward to the March roundtable, and we did barely any promo for it because we got so caught up in the other things that we were doing.
We
and
were
I remember
launching the book club at that time.
Right, yeah, we were launching the book club. And I remember talking to Marie the morning of the roundtable, being like, I don't think anyone's going to show up for this. We barely talked about it. I don't know if people even know it's happening. I know there's an event in the Facebook group, but I don't know if people are seeing that. I feel kind of about like whether it'll work or not. We could just scrap the whole thing. But then the question is, okay, what's the worst that could happen if I show up in that Zoom room for the one person that might show up? And we had like, I don't know, 10, 12 people show up. It more than doubled in size from February. But if I hadn't shown up just because I was feeling like I hadn't taken the right steps to get the maximum value out of it, then I would have missed out on an amazing conversation with some fantastic people about thought leadership topics that are really important to us.
And I think too, like, actually our first ever roundtable that we ever held in any capacity was actually around giving back. And we did have one person come, Rochelle. That's all it was, right? It was just the 3 of us hanging out. But you know what? That conversation was fascinating. I still remember everything we talked about in it. There's things that I want to do from that. And I feel too that like that was valuable, right? That was a valuable time. And so I think just bearing that in mind and knowing that like when we make the decision to follow through, to offer the best freaking program we can for the one person who shows up, it comes back to us and we learn a lot. We are able to develop a better relationship with that person. It's not about quantity, right? And it's not always about profit either.
No, it's about learning. Yeah. I love what Angelica said. She said, I've done webinars with 0 people. Now I can get 80 to 100 on. But that wouldn't have happened without the first webinars with 0. Yeah, you're always gaining something, even if it's not what you expected to gain at first. You're getting practice. You're learning your message. You're practicing repeating that message and being used to sounding like a broken record, which is hard for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I remember reading once, so Denise Duffield Thomas, DDT, who I'm assuming everybody at least has heard of in passing, when she first ran her boot camp, her money-making boot camp, she did it live in Australia, where she's from, and 4 people showed up. And initially she was like, cool, this is a disaster, only 4 people showed up. But she gave the best possible presentation to those 4 people as she could. And then the next time more people showed up, and the next time more people. And now it's her signature program and has, I don't even know how many, a ridiculous number of people in it and who have gone through it. It's all about that perseverance and understanding, Angelica, it's not about the vanity metrics.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are helpful for some things. I mean, like if you want to do math around a launch, you can figure out what number of leads you need in, what your conversion rate is, and all of those vanity metrics are actually important metrics for hitting certain income goals. But I think the key is they don't determine your self-worth as a leader or as an entrepreneur or as a decision maker.
Yeah, and they don't determine the value of your program or your offerings either.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me make sure I'm up on all the comments here. Yeah, the conversation is valuable no matter how many people are there. Absolutely, Rochelle.
Thanks for
The
being there,
aftermath.
Rochelle.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. The aftermath hype from the first roundtable forced me to put on my schedule. Yay! Well, we're really happy to have the group growing because the conversations are amazing. And for those of you who haven't been to one, we don't run those conversations. We facilitate them. We kind of keep the conversation going and make sure everyone has a say. But that's a space for you guys to step in and voice what you have to say around leadership, without it just being in this text box along the side like it is right now.
And so the next one, if you're interested in coming to it, is April 25th. That'll be at 1:30 Eastern / 10:30 Pacific. And if you go to Thought Leaders Think Tank to the events tab, you'll see there the event, the roundtable event is there, and you can click that you want to attend, and then you'll be getting access to the Zoom call that way.
Yes. Jennifer says, I'm scarce-sighted about my first course I'm creating now and still figuring it out as I go, but know people need it. Awesome. Scarce-sighted is a good place to be because it usually means you're onto something.
Yes.
One of the things, I can't remember if it was Lacey or Adrian who went through this with us, but one of the things that was really helpful to me was creating objectives around something that are within my control.
Yes.
So we used to say, I want to get 20 people into this program, and then it wouldn't happen and we'd feel like a failure. Instead, we could say, we want to reach out to 100 people about this program, and then let the chips fall where they may. And that gives us information for next time. Maybe we hit our goal, maybe we don't. But what we are doing is achieving the objectives that are within our control and not leaving our self-worth up to someone else's actions.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So I think, having those goals, like I want a 100K revenue year, I want whatever. It is like, it's fine to have those, but to remember that, like, at the end of the day, what can you control? It's not necessarily going to be that. So making decisions around what actions you're going to take that you can control to get you closer to those revenue goals or those people in the program goals or get you on the stage kind of goals. Maybe it is just, I'm going to pitch this many speaking venues.
Yep. And I think the key here is if you do nothing, you won't get anywhere.
Yeah.
So for a really long time, I wanted to be in media publications like Huffington Post and Thrive, which I've been published in now. And now I'm seeking for higher publications like Forbes and Business Insider and things like that. And for a long time, I was saying, I really want to be in Forbes, but I hadn't sent them a single pitch. Did I expect them to come knocking on my door and be like, hey, we like you. Do you want to be in Forbes? No, that's not how it works. But I was getting paralyzed and caught in my self-talk or getting caught up by busy work so that I wasn't taking the steps necessary to move myself forward. So now I'm just like, okay, what are the steps that I need to do to make this happen? I need to pitch them X number of times with X number of articles, and I just need to make it happen and take those steps because otherwise I'm not moving in that direction ever. Like, no one's going to knock on your door and make the decision for you. Rochelle says that was a huge reframe for me at the retreat, focusing on...
Are you there?
Oh, sorry. I think my internet cut out. Sorry, I think I talked over you. Go, continue.
No, I'm glad that was a reframe for you. That's good. And I think the other piece too is like going back to another nugget of wisdom from Rochelle from this, right? Is like, no one's waiting on you to make the decision. So if you have your own internal sense of urgency around it, that's going to be what propels you forward. Oh, interesting. Linda says, that's what I've been doing wrong in setting goals. And I hate goal setting. Okay, well, it's not a wrong thing, right? You can have both types. But I'm glad that this is a reframe for you too, Linda. That's really great to hear.
I think it's an important one because I think it's our natural tendency to set goals that are outside of our control.
Yeah.
Or that are at least external goals. And maybe this is just a product of, growing up in school systems where the goal is to get a certain grade, get a certain percentage and things like that. But even that, you only have so much control over.
Yeah.
Having been a teacher, trust me, you don't have as much control over your grade as you might think.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Have we gotten to the giving an A section yet in the book? I'm not sure that we have. We'll come
no,
back
I
to
don't think.
this. We'll come back to this,
Yeah.
Linda, in the book club. But what happens when you give yourself the benefit of the doubt, and then that like you have the freedom to take actions that are going to get you closer to it. Like, what happens when you feel like you can't fail? Because really all it is these are the personal goals that you're setting for yourself that,
Yeah.
it's very exciting to turn your mindset around and to be like, I can't fail because I've already done my 3 reach outs for pitching for podcasts. Like, let's see what happens. Maybe I'll pitch 3 more.
Yeah, it's true. All right, so we've talked about a lot of different things around decision making here. To wrap it up, I want to know from you guys, and we asked this question in the group earlier this week, but just to sort of put it out there again, what are some decisions that you need to make for yourself? It can be business related if you want, it doesn't have to be, but we all have decisions every single day. So what is a decision that you need to make and take imperfect action on, so that you can move in the direction that you want to move, knowing that it may not turn out exactly how you want it to turn out, but that you're at least taking steps forward. So I'd love to hear what you have to say on that. Pop it in the comments, or if you want to mull it over and come back and pop it in later, that's cool too, because decisions need mulling sometimes, and that's okay too.
Gotcha. Thanks for clarifying that, Linda. Yeah, I'm glad that you're not feeling that it's a judgment piece to say it's wrong,
Mm-hmm.
in general, or it's wrong for me to set these goals. But I like that you're distinguishing that it's not actually motivating for you. I think that's a key thing too, right? Is like, look at what is motivating for you. Like when Josh and I first got married, for saving money for him, like just having a number in the bank account was motivating for him. For me, I'm like, okay, cool, but I need something to do with it. Are we going on a trip? Are we like saving for a house? Like, why are we saving? I need a reason. Or maybe the reason is just so we could maybe retire someday. Like, that's fine. But I need a why behind it. So finding what is motivating for you to make the decision, I think is
Yeah.
very key. So I'm glad that you brought that to light, Linda. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
Erin.
Yeah, I think it's super important.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so to quickly recap, we talked about how there is no such thing usually. I'm not going to put a hard rule on anything in life, but usually there's no such thing as a problem. It's just a decision that needs to be made. So once you have that reframe, the problem is no longer something wrong. It's just a decision that needs to be made. And then just because it's reframed, that doesn't necessarily make the decision easy. Simple is not always easy. And usually it's a simple decision, but a lot of times that's not an easy decision. It's hard, but that's okay because we can work through it. And we also talked about imperfect action and working through imperfect action and not getting paralyzed by trying to wait for the perfect circumstances. I think I got everything.
Yeah.
We touched on anything else? Oh, we also touched on balancing the intuitive piece versus the data piece. So where do you
Yes.
strike the balance between the two?
Yeah. So you're a pantser, are you a strategizer, and how can you come more towards the middle of that spectrum? This is a very interesting comment here from Angelica. I thought later was now, but it's making me frustrated. So I think too, that's another thing to look at is like, what is driving your decisions? What is the motivation? Is the motivation frustration, and these feelings of it feeling not fast enough? Or is the motivation something exciting, something that lights you up, right? I think if we're able to do more of the latter, I think that's probably a better mindset to be making decisions from. So I guess my question back to you, Angelica, is how can you reframe the conversation to be making a decision based on values and vision rather than frustration and feeling like it's not moving as fast as your expectations?
Yeah, absolutely. Linda, it's just to post what decision you're working through right now. If there's a decision that you know you need to make to move forward, just let us know what it is. If you feel comfortable sharing, obviously. We're not forcing anything out of anyone here because sometimes the biggest decisions are the most personal ones. Oh,
Yeah.
that's something else we talked about right at the beginning, micro decisions.
Right. Yeah. So if you're
Micro
able
decisions are
to
important too.
break down a decision into micro decisions and take those sort of baby steps towards it, or conversely, if you're able to make a big decision, like for instance, me going to the gym felt like a really big decision, going back to the gym, but now I'm making micro decisions every time I go back to continue that. So be thinking about that too, that these don't have to be big things. We can break it down into smaller, easier steps.
Totally. Absolutely. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. A few quick housekeeping things. We mentioned at the beginning on Friday, we are going to be joined by one of our amazing clients, Tanya Gerard, who is an expert at all things decision making. So we're going to be hopping on here in the Facebook group on live with her. So if you have any other questions or comments or thoughts around decision making, that is the time and place. So it's going to be Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, and we will post an event in the group so that you can RSVP to that and get a reminder so you don't miss it. Of course, it will be on live, so if you can't make it at that time, there will be a replay. And secondly, I keep forgetting to mention this to you guys, but so when we're done with these, we pin them to the top of the group for the week so that people can catch the replay. But if you ever want to watch any of the past episodes that we've done, like let's say you're new to the group and you want to see what we did back in February, we do post all of these on both our YouTube channel and on our blog, and we'll post links to that in the comments so you can go back and watch past episodes if you want to revisit any of the topics that we've talked about.
Exactly.
So these do not just disappear into the ether.
Yes, and the blog is great too if you have limited time, because we tend to talk for about an hour, which can be a significant chunk of time for you. I guess you could speed us up to chipmunk speed if you wanted to, which is totally fine. But also the great thing about the blog is that we say, okay, at this time, this is where we're talking about this, and we distill it into the big thoughts, the main points. So that is at northstarmessagingblog.com. You can also just get to it from our main website and just click the blog button, northstarmessaging.com.
Yes, and we'll post all those links so you don't have to remember them.
Yes.
But there's lots of juicy conversations in here. So if you're especially new to the group and you want to just sort of revisit things, see what we've been up to, go ahead and check those out because there's some great conversations from all of you wonderful people, because it's not just us blabbing at each other. It's a group community effort, and every single Wednesday's become one of my favorite days of the week because we get to talk with you guys about these amazing topics and really hear from you, which is the most important part, I think.
Exactly. So thanks so much for joining us, and we will catch you next week, same time.
See you then.